Hello TikTokers, I'm a bit peed off. I just did a video on this subject. I did it on the wrong channel and plus it came out sideways. So I decided to do it again on this channel. And it's basically following up on my video that I did the other day about Nick Griffin and Krishnan Guru Marathi. They were debating, well, Nick Griffin was saying if he had 50 grand, if he had the 9 billion that the government is wasting on all kinds of stuff, he would invest that into the voluntary repatriation package, which is currently 3,000, and make it 50,000 to encourage immigrants to go back. So what I decided to do is look at it from a black person's perspective. How would I think about reducing immigration? What are my thoughts? So I'm going to have to read them now because I'm only going to forget. I'm going to lose my train of thought. I just know myself. And then I'll come back to it if I've got any time. So excuse me from reading and having less eye contact with you. So how to reduce immigration. These are my notes. It's like closing the gate after the horse has bolted. First, we need to analyse why immigration has happened in the first place. And the reason for immigration was support for the country after World War II. Those are the main reasons. It was to balance the shortfall of jobs, i.e. fill the labour shortages after World War II. It's also about cheaper labour, and it's also about the financial benefit that immigration brings. So the British Nationality Act allowed allowed citizens of the British Empire to live and work in the UK without a visa. That's the first thing. So the UK thinks to themselves, oh, what's the easiest way we can get some people over here to help us out that demands less bureaucracy? I know, the British colonies. They can just come and go as they please because they don't need a visa. Let's invite them to come over. So what they did, they invited them to come over. And so they'd fill the labour shortages. I mean, I know you've heard this story over and over again. But what the UK didn't bargain for... Well, I'm going away from my notes and I'm going to run out of time. So let me just read my notes. Okay, so... UK gives immigrants... Okay, the UK gives immigrants a place to stay at a price. The immigrant not only pays to stay here, but also works to live here and pays back through taxes, ideally. UK would need to have belief in her citizens. And why doesn't she? Why doesn't the UK believe that having her own citizens is enough? Why does the UK feel that only immigrants are the answer? What is it about immigrants? Why the UK feel that they are the only way to get the country on its feet? So that is a question you'd have to ask yourself. What is it that the country thinks? Why they don't think, look, we've got more than enough? Because remember, black people only take over between 4 and 6% of the whole of the UK population. I know it looks like more than that, but they're only 4 to 6%. Well, so why can't that remaining 94% build the country without them? What is that mindset? Why that cannot happen? Going off the point, let me stick to my thing. Historically, it has to do with power. It's about, we can control them. They'll be grateful for what we've given them and then they'll leave. But what the UK didn't bank on is they didn't plan for immigrants to be educated. They didn't plan for immigrants to have intelligence. They didn't plan for immigrants to procreate, i.e. have children. And they didn't plan for them to stay in the country after a certain period. But what's happened is it's a bit like squatters' rights, isn't it? You stay... Well, they don't exist anymore, but back in the day we had squatters' rights. You have continuous possession of a property for 10 years. You're actually allowed to stay there. So even though we weren't squatters because we had visa, we didn't need a visa to come here, it's still a similar legal loophole that the UK found themselves in and thought, oh, bloody hell, they've been here too long. We can't get rid of them now. So what are we going to do? I know, we'll be a little bit underhanded. We'll destroy all their boarding passes so they can't prove that they came here, and then we'll say that they're illegal, and then we'll deport them. That's the best way. But once again, there were lawyers. They forget that we have, I'm not even saying just black lawyers, but we have lawyers who believe in fairness and justice, who intervened and said, no, you can't do this. You can't get rid of people's boarding passes and then claim just because they can't prove that they've been here for 50 years, you deport them. But they did. And a lot of people were deported illegally. They were detained in prison illegally. And that's what happened. And now there's all this kind of compensation going on. I don't know what's going on. But when they couldn't get them that way, when they thought, oh, well, bloody hell, a lot of them are legal. We can't do it this way because this person is interfering. A lot of times the law interferes in our favour because the law, they just love to find loopholes. And then, so what they do is they think, oh, well, what we'll do is we'll gather up as much niggers as we can, or black people as we can, and if they have a jail sentence for more than 2 years, they have to be deported if they're not born in the country. So that was another tactic. Let's criminalise them, and then they'll have to go back. We can deport them legally, even though they were illegally detained in the first place. This is just my opinion. Currently now they think, okay, we need people to come in as tourists, and we need the money from students, so let's charge them extortionate prices if they want to come here. So we have these extortionate prices that immigrants want to pay, and some of them do pay it because they've been saving for goodness knows how long. You have student fees that come in, and they've upped them as well. So it's backfired. They underestimated the resilience despite racism and underpay. Now they're trying to correct their errors. When the UK signed the UN Refugee Convention, also known as the 1951 Geneva Convention, that was also following World War II, it was to protect people fleeing war and persecution. It was a promise to offer asylum to those who needed international protection due to their circumstances. Nothing's changed. But the thing is that the population has increased. So when they signed that, it was just like, number one, it wasn't as bad as it was now. But now they've got goodness knows how many people seeking asylum, and they're still stuck with signing this convention, and they are trying to get out of it. But that's another reason for the influx of immigration. It's not the immigrants' fault. Britain needs to believe in its citizens. It needs to upskill them. It needs to build their confidence. It needs to help them with their attitude and their behaviour towards certain jobs. Britain needs to look at itself and stop blaming the bloody immigrants, because they couldn't come here without permission. And yes, you have a minority that jump on lorries and try to get here by boats and, that kind of stuff. But that is a minority. But when you're thinking about, I was reading one of my comments, and they're saying, oh, just go back. Go back to where? A lot of people are born here now. So it's just a mess, in the sense that the UK government didn't do their homework. They didn't have a strategic plan. They operated in desperation, and now they don't know how to reverse the clock. Well, they do. They probably create some kind of war and start a clean slate, and who knows, make it as difficult as possible, like what they said with the hostile environment policy. They make it as difficult as possible, but it still doesn't correct the nature of the UK mentality, which needs to change. And it needs to change not only towards immigrants, but it needs to change towards themselves. They need to say, look, we can look after ourselves. We are resilient. We are independent. We don't need you. And once that happens, then there might be a change. But until that point, until they have this mentality that we need immigrants just so we can lord over